Okay. Go ahead.
Thanks. Hello all. Right off the bat, this meeting may involve the remote participation by members either by telephone or other electronic means due to the local public health emergency, novel coronavirus pandemic. Pursuant to the provisions of Minnesota Statute Section 13D.021. And hello and welcome all. This is the December meeting of the Programs and Policy Subcommittee of the Minneapolis Pedestrian Advisory Committee. And I am Peter Vader, one of the co-chairs. Julia Curran is our other co-chair. I'm not sure if they're along yet.
Hello.
Hello. There, great. We have two phone numbers. I know we're taking a roll by Millicent attaching the participant list. I know we have two phone numbers in the participant list. If either or both would like to announce, say who they are or not.
This is Julia. I'm one of the phone numbers.
Okay. Hi, Julia.
Hi.
Great.
Hi, this is Hamid. I'm one of the phone numbers.
Oh. Hello, Hamid. Hello.
Thanks, Hamid. Welcome.
Thank you. Small technology business is interested in learning more about transportation and ADA.
Welcome.
Right. Good. Yeah, we're glad you're here. Having dispensed with that part of the call to order and agenda, we have move on to the items. We have 3.5 items today. We're saving a resolution for last that we've I believe is drafted and concocted for another City of Minneapolis program we were introduced to recently. But let's take it right in order though. So the first item on the agenda proper is a capital budget request and capital improvement projects resource overview assigned to Chris Kartheiser and Matthew Deardahl, both of whom I see here. Welcome and take it away.
Cool, I can jump in. Hey everybody, thanks. Hope everybody's doing well as we approach the new year. So this first item, the CBR capital budget request was, I believe, an ask from, I don't remember who, but it came up in a previous meeting just to maybe learn a little bit more about this. So I just wanted to show you what the CBR is, the capital budget request, and this relates to our CIP work. This is essentially kind of what the CIP looks like in terms of what our group puts together and puts into CLIC is these capital budget requests. So I wanted to show you this and just give it a couple examples. And if you have any questions or comments about this, then we can refer back to this as we talk about the CIP resolution, but I'm really not going to spend a ton of time presenting on this. But like I said, I'm happy to answer questions. So very quickly, the capital budget requests, this essentially, each one of these line items here that you can see corresponds to a particular program or project in the CIP. So anytime we have like a reconstruction or a program like a sidewalk gap program or something like that, and I can go into it, they have a page on here and you can click on each of these and go to get more detail. So maybe I can pull up a good example. Let's do one reconstruction here. So this is Grand Ave South, which is one that has come before the committee and has now been reconstructed. And you can see out there today, but at kind of the inception of the project, this is what is put together to decide whether or not we're going to do something or not. So it gives a lot of background information, project description, how long it is, what's being built, the reason why, and some of this is kind of standard language, but fills in like some different data points and stuff, maps. So this is just like a good place to go if you want any information on a particular project that's upcoming in the CIP. It gets a little bit in the weeds, so like some of this might be a little bit boring in some regards, but also it's kind of where you can find some details that are things that I know people in this committee ask about quite a bit, of like how much money or kind of the different things that are around the project, different things like that. So I'll maybe give one more example. And Matthew, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add while I pull up like a program example. If you want to jump in, feel free to do that.
Yeah, I'll just say that the CIP or the Click book here that we're talking about is not something that is like bedtime reading. I don't imagine people would go through and just like read through it unless maybe that's your style. But it's
Good for
super
insomnia,
helpful.
though.
What's that?
Good for insomnia.
Right. But it's super helpful, at least the way I use it. And I think the way you all might want to use it too, is if you're just wondering like when is a particular project going to be built, like when do we have it programmed, that's a good use for it. Or if you just want to like double check like, hey, what is our pedestrian safety program say it's going to do? Like what's the point of it, and like what are we thinking over the next coming years? That's how I use it a lot. Is just trying to like refresh myself on what we have planned, and this is just the best way to do that in my opinion, if you're looking for like some specific program or project details. So that's my little pitch for it, I guess.
I actually
Cool.
used it the other day to find out when they're going to work on 30th in Chicago, and it was great for that because it says the map says everything I needed to know.
Yeah, and it's that's a great way to use it. It's also important to note that like the CIP does change from year to year, and like things can be moved around. So like if it says 4 years out in a given year, that could change. Like the next year, it could move up or down or things like that. So this is like the current reflection of what we think is going to happen, but some of this is still a little bit fluid. So this is an example of a pedestrian safety program. So as opposed to like a very specific project like Grand that has specific scope, like X street to X street on Grand, this has the amount of funding for the program and leaves a little bit of that up to us as staff to decide where that funding is used and just kind of explains the structure of the program and things like that. So promise that I would keep it brief. If there's any questions or like anything else people want to hear or add comments to, happy to do that. But that's all I've got.
I've got a quick question. So I've been looking through some of these proposals, and I see that on the front page there's a department priority, and I'm pleased to see that Vision Zero project's #1 priority for Public Works. But how do you go about prioritizing the projects on the list as a department?
I don't know if I'm able to speak to that, actually. Matthew, are you able to talk to that a little bit?
Well, I think, and maybe others on the call too, but it's also catching me a little off guard. I think, is it Click that does that? I think or is it Public Works? That's a good question. Let's take that down as a question. I don't recall.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, when you say prioritize, do you just mean like in what year, or is there like more behind kind of the priority that you're asking?
Click on one of them. Click on the Vision Zero.
Right.
I know what you're talking about, Paul, and I think it's Click that does that. But
well, Click's the final judge, at least as far as each year in the spring, how they'll be funded and whether they'll be funded in the year that the
one
calls for.
I'm gonna see if I can get an answer before the meeting's done.
So Click can move the funding around.
We'll get you an answer on that, Paul and everyone.
I guess maybe tying into that, when things move around, like when the budgeting changed this past year, and things like sidewalk gap programs, sidewalk gap fill-ins that were planned get pushed off. Is that would be the same sort of mechanism for? Is that within Click as well, or?
So ultimately, and things have changed now. But previously, like the council would have approved the CIP and decided which year things go in and been able to move things around. I believe the mayor is the final stop on that now, though I'm not entirely sure. But Click makes recommendations for the budget, which then the mayor and council take under advisement and kind of go back and forth a little bit. And ultimately, it is the elected officials that kind of make that final decision, though.
Okay, thanks.
But a lot happens with Click, and that's kind of the next stop shop after staff have it. It goes straight to Click from there.
All right.
Actually, you know what? Now that it's sort of hitting me, it says department priority, so that makes it seem clear that it is Public Works that probably decides that. That makes sense.
Other questions for Chris and Matthew on the CBR CIP overview?
Yeah, so this one I admit might be a little hard to answer, but if you go back to that page, this page right here, it says like affected wards all, and then various locations throughout the city. I realize that it could be a general project, right? But are there any places elsewhere that Minneapolis publishes like maps of certain projects? Or I'm just trying to think like if there are citywide projects, that's great to know that they're citywide, but I'm wondering if there's any more specificity on the locations of specific actions being taken with these projects.
Yeah, so it depends on the program. And again, that's like different from if a project's in the CIP, that's very specific, but like the programs leave it up to staff to kind of decide that. So staff run those different programs in different ways. But like, for example, our resurfacing map, like we do publish that a couple of years out. And then the Vision Zero is a little bit different. I don't know how far out we publish that. Like we definitely have a map of projects that we'll be doing next year, and we've brought those through the committee, but it's not published like with the CIP or approved, which is kind of the difference of the programs. Is like it leaves that flexibility in terms of like no formal approval through council of where those locations are. But we typically do share those, and most, if not all of those, come through the committee in some form or fashion.
Okay, so that makes sense. So for example, like streetlight replacement, something more technical, are there maps available for projects like that?
I don't know specifically for that one, like how that program is run. Like I know that we do have like a lead staff on our streetlights who pay attention to that specifically. I'm not very directly involved in that. Matthew, I don't know if you know a lot about that. We previously had the pedestrian street lighting corridor policy, which I believe changed with the transportation action plan. So I'm not entirely sure. I don't know that we replace street lights outside of capital projects. I think we do it as we do capital projects in areas. Is that right, Matthew?
I believe so.
How about bulbs?
That would be a maintenance thing, so that wouldn't be in the CIP, and that would be something that we do like on a rolling basis. Like my guess is there's probably 311 requests about like bulbs being out that they field, as well as just being informed in other ways about things that go out and replacing those kind of as they come. That's a good question, a good kind of distinction between like maintenance and like capital improvement.
Thanks for answering my question.
I do have just a little bit more information. I'm talking to Trey Joyner on our CIP team. So yes, it is Public Works that decides that ranking. It's not super quantitative. It is somewhat qualitative and sort of maybe subjective. And then he also pointed out that the years that the projects are slotted into also have a big impact on priority. So, we have the out year, which is 5 years out or 6 years out. And then as you get closer and closer, those projects are more locked in. And so that's a big part of priority as well.
And often, just because it was the specific example, the Penn Street Lighting Corridor is a program in here, and so you can find more information about kind of how that's done, and yeah, that's in there.
All right. Pending any more questions, this agenda item leads into leading to the next one. So certainly questions relevant can come up there too. Where the next item we'll be crafting and drafting our CIP resolution, a continuing process. Chris, remind me again, please, when we want to be finished with this. Please.
I think the idea is that this would be the first and last time that we do the resolution in this subcommittee and bring it to the full. If we need more time after today's meeting, that's totally fine. I would say by February at the latest is when we want to pass this, but I don't see a reason that we couldn't do it today unless something comes up.
Yeah, agreed. Okay. And there's a resolution document to bring up our 2022 PAC CIP resolution version 2. And I guess the next step, I will, how about if I read it as written, as drafted? Should I do that next? Okay. I just need a little, sure can scroll down when the time comes. But I was starting out ways that what we've drafted for our 2022 PAC CIP resolution, capital improvement projects resolution. And it reads as follows. The city of Minneapolis has adopted groundbreaking policies around changing transportation modes for the residents of the city and making it easier to get around our fair metropolis without a personal vehicle. Given the cataclysmic data around climate breakdown that has come out through the UN's International Panel on Climate Change in 2021, Minneapolis is poised for rapid transportation shifts. Minneapolis may have a robust bus system, growing bike lane coverage, and decent sidewalks, but cars still rule the road. Car infrastructure in and of itself is a barrier to walking, biking, and quick public transit as much as it contributes to climate change. Thus, the PAC finds the yearly CIP process to be, as it currently exists, a contributor to climate breakdown. CIP year after year prioritizes concrete pouring for rapid personal vehicle use, even if it marginally makes biking or walking feel safer. Given the foregoing, PAC calls for changing how Public Works approaches the CIP process and the way we interact with our streets. Instead of a piecemeal project by project shift of our current street grid, we need rapid system-wide changes. Adding paint and bollards has proven to be a quick and inexpensive way to create bus lanes, bike lanes, and more walking space on paved roads. A CIP program to implement those tools at scale, citywide, can transition our street system to meet TAP and climate emergency goals, and we believe is uniquely capable of doing so within our ever-shortening global timeframe. Reducing vehicle traffic by transitioning streets to, thank you, reducing vehicle traffic by transitioning streets to limit car capacity, but increase walking, biking, and transit users will reduce the wear and tear cost of road maintenance, saving money in the long run to operate and fix streets. Transitioning streets to these more economical modes is also cheaper to enact, saving funds for considering and creating new infrastructure to handle cataclysmic weather events like more freeze-thaw cycles or the yearly flooding we see as the climate transitions. You, as the clique, bear the responsibility to make it known to the mayor, city council, and public works that a rapid transition is necessary and it must begin this year. Future generations depend on your decisions today. That's the resolution.
Second.
Thank you.
And just to be clear, we don't need to formally pass this today, so we don't need a second or an official motion.
Right.
We'll just do that all at the full stuff. And I don't think we need to read the next one, which is the resolution from last year, but just to note for people who maybe haven't seen it, if you want to pull it up online, we do have last year's resolution that we can also use for today, and that's appended to this one.
Oh, sure.
And so, Peter, I don't know, maybe I can throw in a little bit of context, at least how I've been thinking about it. And, you know, as staff, this isn't my resolution, so I don't want to insert myself too much, but I think there's probably a few different options as to how to do this today. I think like the resolution that was read is a little bit different than for example, like last year's resolution, which focuses pretty specifically on like things you want to see in the CIP, and has like these 5 like numbered and bulleted things. The resolution that was read today is a little bit different and kind of like a more holistic view. So I think like that's one thing that could, if the whole pack agrees with that resolution, like be passed on its own, or that could be passed on its own and then also have like the secondary kind of resolution with specific things you want to see in the CIP, or like just the second one, or like if people aren't in favor of the first one or something like that. But those are kind of like the 3 options, just to lay that out, and then I'll step back to see if like Abigail, I don't know if you want to jump in, or Peter, if you have more to add.
Yeah, what I wanted to say was that it's the BAC is also looking at changing its approach to the CIP process and how it has a resolution. So one of those resolutions, like one of the ideas, is to really call out the idea that we need system-wide change at a rapid pace, and that the CIP project is majoritively project, like little piecemeal projects here and there, not like a system overview. And even if we do like a system-based couple of projects for a few years, like that's really all it would take. You know, it's not like we need these deep projects. But the BAC also sees it as a possibility that they will pass a resolution very similar to the kind of language that we have that Peter read for us, but then also might include a couple of ideas for projects, saying, given what we said above, we you know, in the next CIP process, here are some ideas that we do have. We as a group are often a little more like forward thinking than the BAC. So I think the BAC is going to come to a compromise position where they're going to say something strong like we do, but then also have some backed up like project ideas or program ideas. We feel, I guess, a couple of us, especially us who have been through the CIP process multiple times, have found that like we changed the way we did resolutions, where we did only just offer up a couple of ideas of programs. And that actually worked for a couple of years, but it seems that it's kind of not working anymore. Like I think the budget and the appetite aren't ready for like more projects or funding more like pedestrian and bike programs, so that there's more money in those buckets for little projects. And given the timeline, it just doesn't seem feasible. Given the climate breakdown timeline, it just doesn't seem feasible to keep asking for like a program at a time and hoping to win one like we did with Vision Zero. So that was kind of the idea around writing this draft. But otherwise, of course, we can, maybe we just want to talk about, like Chris said, as a whole, what this draft should look like, and then we can kind of draft what it should say kind of in a smaller format. So I don't know if we just want to open it for general comments or ideas that people have.
Yeah, the floor is open for that. So looking for hands or.
So I'm just wondering, so if I'm a member on the click and I get this resolution, I'm there, I get the resolution, you know, what do I do with it then? Is it, I think we need more specifics. Do we budget all of our money to, you know, bollards and paint and temporary solutions, or, you know, what's, you know, where do I go from there?
Can I actually just quick point of, well, question, I was gonna say order, but it's really a question. Is this, like, typically the resolutions are sort of formally sent to the mayor, city council, and then public works staff, you know, as like the target of the resolution, right? And then sometimes Hennepin County if it's theirs, or MnDOT, et cetera. Is this meant to specifically go to click members? Is it click that you want to do the work? Or are you suggesting that public works changes it and presents to click? That's
a good point, because you're right. We suggest to public works, and then public works picks up some ideas to suggest to click, right? Yeah. So yeah. Would we maybe our little last paragraph, which is just 2 sentences or 1 sentence, maybe that little paragraph should change, where we address public works and say what you present to click will matter for next year. And if you don't present some system-wide program opportunities instead of little projects, like, we won't make any of our goals. Like, I could see that, but I don't know what other people think. That might make more sense.
I'll say I agree with that, and then I'll stop talking. Thank you.
Okay.
I am open to people who understand the strategy better, but I think that having the fundamental message that like it's fiddling while Rome burns, what we're doing right now. I mean, it's worse. It's throwing matches on fires and, you know, actively worsening harm while Rome burns. So whatever we can do to convey that is urgent. I don't know if strategically it means we also are sort of saying here's some other things we can do. That's fine, but at a certain point, it's ludicrous to keep participating in something that is so far from reality. Like it's just so detached from the real world. So that system changing might be slow, but calling that system into question and who the audience is. I appreciate the resolution as drafted for what it does in that regard, and I think it's necessary. And any other message beyond that is all about strategy to me.
Thanks, Julia. Well, we ponder that in the language you might want to use in the last paragraph there. Barb, I know Barb has Barb, your hands up.
Well, I just want to say I think that second to the last paragraph is very strong, and I think it's a really good idea to say, let's do this. This is reasonable. It's inexpensive. It's something we can do right now. Let's do it, because it will have an impact that putzing around and doing project by project, taking 5 to 10 years, not meeting our goals. Let's just repaint and do the bollards and get things going. So people start adjusting to a slower traffic pace, narrower lanes. They start dealing with that. That's what we need people to acclimate to that, and doing a little bit over here and a little bit over here. People go, oh, that's a slow street, but I can really go fast on this street. It doesn't really change things. So I love that paragraph. I agree that you probably want to have it go to Public Works on the last paragraph, but you might also say to them the way that it ends. Please bear in mind that to the mayor and the city council, and then cut off Public Works. Rapid transit is necessary, and it must begin this year. I think that's a really strong statement. Things have to get moving because they're not. And it's scary for me to look at the people that I know that I love that have little kids and what they're going to face in the next 10, 15 years. I'll be gone probably by then, or close to it, and won't have a whole lot of need to be walking around. Maybe I'm not sure how I'll be, but it scares me to death for young children and for my friends that are in their 20s and 30s. So,
yeah,
I think it's a really good paragraph. That's all I had.
Thanks, Barb.
The one thing that's occurring to me, and thank you, Barb, and also I appreciate you in this world for as long as we get to have you here, and all of you.
Me too.
But we don't mention that. The one thing that isn't mentioned is sort of how ludicrous it is when we know what system shift has to happen, and we know it's coming regardless, like it's either coming through proactive or reactive measures, collapse or choices. It's like doing the temporary thing is also the smart thing for iterative design, for understanding what we'll need. I don't know if that's something that kind of convolutes things, or if that would be a piece to put in there, that we're designing under old framings and systems. And if there's any strategy to talking about, we still have funding mechanisms coming from the state, coming from the feds, that limit our ability to shift things rapidly and to shift things as they need to. So when the city can do things, when we can do temporary things, while we're waiting for other systems to catch up, and so that we can start building other systems where we don't fully know what they look like. There's that very specific value.
In the resolution as drafted, we're calling for a conceptual change, I guess, for lack of a better word, in the fourth paragraph, calls for changing how Public Works approaches the CIP process. I'm suggesting in the following paragraph where we mentioned the CIP program to implement the paint bollards, et cetera, at scale, that we use language to call for it there. We call for it, call for the plan, immediately, or call for it in, to be instituted in this year's CIP results. That's a little.
So
yeah, I really.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
My question was, Peter, how would you add something to the language?
Yeah,
Is that what you're saying?
Really in that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th paragraph, where the paragraph that begins adding paint and bollards, and then the second sentence there, we call for a CIP program to implement these tools. And, I would use some word like immediately, beginning this year, something in that to that effect, and that make our specific call as specific as possible.
Hey, along those lines, Matthew, I'd be interested in your perspective on this. I think it might, there might be some benefit to like call this out in relation to the Vision Zero program in some way. And I guess the main reason I say that is like when I first look at this, I kind of say like, oh, that exists. But then the more I look at it, it doesn't exist because it's saying for a different purpose than the Vision Zero program, but it's like the same thing, but like, let's do it to combat these different goals that aren't safety. And so maybe just like putting in something saying that, or like comparing it to Vision Zero, but making it clear could help with that. And I mean, we can help like get the message to whoever needs that, but it might just strengthen it a little bit, just along the lines of specificity. And if you all don't think that makes sense, that's totally fine, but just adding that in.
I agree with what you're saying, and it kind of gets back to, I think, Paul, the way you asked the question is also what I'm wrestling with as well. Like I've been rereading the 3rd, 4th, and 5th paragraph, and I think it's like really close to very clear on what it is, because I do think you're literally asking for paint bollards and, I would argue other treatments, but that is what you're asking for. But what you're asking for is like citywide, systematically, like changing everything, right, in like a year or 2 or 3, right? And so that could look like a lot of 4 to 3s. It could be, like you say here, getting rid of. So I do think, I think it's close. So I don't know if Chris, if that answers your question, and I think yes, we probably should add a little bit more. Go ahead.
I have a suggestion. Because we're talking now, like, I really like it. I'm wondering, the adding paint and bollards paragraph, maybe we need to take that and put it, like swap it with the following paragraph. So kind of explaining, we going to give our reasoning where it's like, let's do a cheap program. And then the adding paint and bollards paragraph comes right before the like call to action to, obviously we'll change it maybe to Public Works and then maybe also click. And then maybe we can just add a little bit of language within adding paint and bollards to explain we need something system-wide, bigger than Public Works, which is project by project. We need it to encompass a large portion of the budget for like 1 year, or we're asking that it like take over a large piece of the budget for that 1 year to do rapid transitioning for lane redrawing, taking over some space for walking and rolling and biking on different streets using just paint and bollards. So we don't need to pour more concrete, but we can transition the roads quickly and then, go back and eventually change them if that's what's needed. So I'm thinking even just like switching the paragraphs, and then like Matthew and Chris and everyone saying is adding some clarity, would actually then the end of our resolution would have a 1 program recommendation, and that would be what it would be read like.
That I like where you're going with that, because and maybe even having like a header, like a font or something where it's like specifically like title it like what we are asking, or you know what I mean, like something where it's like,
sure,
because as I'm reading through this, it's kind of like That's what I want to
It
find
gets
out. Right?
lost
Is
in
like,
there, yeah. But if it's the
Yeah.
last paragraph, then you understand we build our way up to
Yeah.
this is what we're asking for. It should be massive, and it
Yeah.
should encompass the entire work of Public Works for one construction season. And then the last paragraph is that call to action to Public Works, to City Council, to the mayor, to click that call to action that it has to happen. And it just needs to be one of those years where we break the cycle of the CIP because we have to.
Yeah.
So that could be edited if people think that that's like a better way to make it feel like we're actually asking for something specific.
I personally like that, Abigail. I think that makes it a stronger statement. And I would also add in reaction to somebody's statement, I can't remember who brought it up about Vision Zero, to make a clarifying statement that while we understand that Vision Zero is doing this in regards to pedestrian safety, we see this as a broader need to address not only safety, but reduction of traffic speed, reduction of traffic at all, and the other things that I think it would be good to clarify that. I'm not writing it, but to clarify that. I think that would make it strong.
Mhm.
It doesn't have to be long, just a short statement that says we understand Vision Zero is doing some of this, but this is bigger.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Are we in agreement for the basic content so far?
And by agreement, what we're saying is that this what I read is the resolution in total. We might get specific. I'm asking this question: is that we might get specific about our call to action, but we are not adding on any other projects, citing any other projects like below or before. Is that what I understand? What we're agreeing to? Because I am based on what I just said, based on how Abigail presented about how to make what's the effective ask. I would support keeping it that concise and making our call for action specifically this certainly calling for a big thing, but specifically it's one thing. I won't finish one last comment. That is, like, I like the resolution to call for the action, what we're asking for, or at least ground it in the first sentence. And so I think the call for I would lead with is the given the foregoing 1, 2, 3, 4th paragraph, I would put that up top and say this year PAC is calling for, or PAC calls for changing how Public Works the CIP process. Then go into and then that certainly sets the stage for what we're asking, and then it gives anyway. That's all, I guess. Yeah, that's so. So let's.
I guess I'm interested in making sure that we have the content agreement roughly, and then like continuing to workshop it to really get that flow in the heading so that it's as succinct as possible if the basic idea is there.
Yeah, I didn't.
And so okay.
I didn't want to assume unanimous consent, but are there any objections to how it's been presented so far? This would be our the resolution more or less in total.
Yeah, I guess I'm just questioning it. So some folks are saying that a previous agenda item, we looked at a list of a whole bunch of projects, a lot of reconstructions, etc. So are folks saying that one year we do no other projects other than doing the temporary paint, bollards, etc., to try to reduce traffic and limit traffic? But but you look at the list of projects, there's a lot of good projects we support, like ADA ramps, which we're going to be talking about in one of the next agenda items. There's a lot of traffic safety, traffic calming. So there's a lot of good projects in there that I think should keep going. So maybe we word it that some paving projects be postponed or eliminated.
I would.
And do this and do more of a larger temporary project over the next year. And I have no idea what this is going to cost compared to the total city reconstruction budget for street work.
And
my
also
feeling-
the usual ways for anything new to go back to the 6th year of the budget. So we're already, unless they put it in year 2, 2023, anything we propose along these lines will be 5 years out.
I mean, I
Automatic.
think
Click moves it forward.
I think that our voice here should be that business as usual doesn't work, and prioritizing this in whatever ways we have at our disposal is critical. In the same way that if we had a street completely fail for whatever reason, it got washed out, or who knows, we might see the CIP process or some part of the city would shift to make sure that we took care of that emergency. I think we need to convey that level of urgency. And there's just no project I can think of that is more vital, especially when we're pouring concrete for streets that are not what we need in 40 years, 10 years. To your point, Paul, I think the projects are themselves good if the world we were in was accepting slow change. They still wouldn't be great, but like the ADA ramps when we don't have winter clearance are kind of, they're not robust and they're getting worse with climate breakdown. So whatever we can do, I think, to urge all systems to shift.
So are you saying that every project review, like at EMI, we should recommend killing that project because this project is more important than those projects?
I mean, those projects aren't important without this project. If we are pushing ourselves into societal collapse, I mean, ADA ramps are, it's hard to see if we don't address the big thing, the little things that are predicated on the big thing cease to have the meaning that we're attributing to them right now. So I would be okay with suggesting we kill them in each one for that reason, or saying this is not up to the challenge of climate breakdown, and then like we have done, saying that, and then sort of saying, given that, here's some feedback. But I mean, at some point, is it a good use of time to live in fiction and plan in fiction without anything, like where's the system shift coming from that we can get behind and support? We're not seeing that coming out post IPCC 2021 report. I don't know that we saw it after the 2018 report. So I
have a few thoughts on this because, and I'm curious what you think. I think including or meaningfully discussing how we would go about doing this seems like maybe not the right place for this resolution. And maybe you want to address that a little bit in the resolution, because it certainly wouldn't be easy to do that. Like there would be questions about the underlying ordinance, the 20-year streets funding plan, the whole existing CIP. I mean, it would be very challenging to figure out how to do this, and I don't know that that's what you're aiming for. I think these are good questions, but does that make sense? Am I on the right track there? Or like you aren't recommending like how to do this, right? Like you just want Public Works to do it, and part of that would be to like figure out the steps to do that, right? Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I think so. I think
I agree.
I would agree.
Okay.
Right.
We're not the Public Works Department. We don't have that knowledge.
All right.
But so similar to Vision Zero, could you have a CIP program that would implement this, and then it would be up to Public Works to figure out how much that's going to cost, and then some other projects would fall out then in order to fund this project as a priority compared to other projects.
I don't think I want to see a broader level of change than just sort of the Vision Zero is kind of. I would hope that Vision Zero starts us being able to think at a systems level about the changes that need to happen, and that this would be building on that, and we might pause all projects for a year in order to prioritize this. that it isn't commensurate with a single project. It's a base layer.
Hey, let's hear from Austin. I see her hand up.
Yeah, a little. So aside from content, because we can talk about content some more, I just want to make sure we got the audience correct. I mean, are we moving away from directing this at Click and more towards Public Works or a different organization? I want to make sure that we discuss that before we wrap it up, because it seems like I'm still a little fuzzy on that, and then maybe others are too.
Yeah.
If no one else jumps in, I'll say I think it's very important, or at least my take on it would be to see it as the mayor, city council, and public works as your audience. I think including Click in there as maybe like a third person use of language, like saying like maybe Click can also take these recommendations as they view it. But I do think that the way the pack is set up, your core audience is, you know, the elected officials and staff of Public Works, and again, Hennepin County, MnDOT, things like that. That's my take. Now, if that's something you want to do differently, I think that would be okay.
Yeah, I agree. I think that would be easy enough to implement. Just the last sentence paragraph, the call to action can just be rearranged a little bit to be to the people that will read this and then also recommend and or approve the CIP for that year, and Click just as a part of that process, not specifically them.
So what is our typing mechanism here for
edits?
Can we do it here?
I would prefer if we could do it offline.
So I would suggest, yeah, if Julia or Peter, if you wanted to take a first shot at incorporating notes, I'd be happy to also look at it too. Or if you guys want, I can look at it, and then we could send it to the few PAC members who are here and had contributing thoughts on it, so that they could add any thoughts before it comes before the PAC next week.
I'd be happy to.
That sounds great. I would as well, although I haven't been writing down notes. So
okay, yeah. Why don't you? Great. Yeah. Why don't Peter you go after it, and then you can just send it to me and Julia, and we can look at it, and then we'll forward it along to everyone here.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, thanks.
Sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
Any last comments on this on the subject? If not,
Peter,
I heard an intake of it.
Hi, I think this is clear, but I just want to double check. The final resolution won't have the second and third page that's shown tonight, right? That was just for context of what you passed last year. Is that correct?
That is my understanding. We did possibly do.
Cool.
Yeah,
and
that was just there so that we could look at the comparison.
Okay, so I guess it's a question I have is like, to the extent our final resolution addresses no other projects, is that what inferences are drawn at the resolution receiver level? You know, is that we don't give a shit about anything else? I don't know that that's. I hope that's not the case.
I mean, it seems pretty clear to me, like kind of like what Julia said, like we can't keep moving forward business as usual until we actually start taking this lens of climate breakdown, or whatever we're going to call this tool, and use that with all projects moving forward. And maybe that means we got to take a break and reassess and do things differently, or maybe we can actually just pick up and roll with this new lens. I don't know. But really, I think the point that I got from reading this is that we cannot keep moving forward with business as usual. Please prioritize the following in either all projects or upcoming projects moving forward.
Yeah.
All right.
I agree.
All right. Well stated, Austin. Thank you. Thank you, Barb. Move back to my agenda. Sounds like we're going to move on to the next item, which is the ADA. We're going to address the ADA transition plan presented to us in November. Abigail, with the help of a contributing correspondent, has drafted a resolution with real strong language, asking for specifics and decrying kind of the lack of specifics and measurements and planning. What they're calling a plan isn't really a plan at all without these specifics. So anyway, without further ado, I'm going to hand it to Abigail. And I've got the resolution up here. If it'll come up, I hope again, but on our screen. But it'll be ready for reading. So go ahead, Abigail. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I think, was it last month or the month before, we saw the ADA transition plan presented by Kelsey from the city, and it was just kind of like just a quick update on what the transition plan, how it was being updated. It's updated every year or two. Matthew, if you have any more to add about that. And I think it was that we heard this and we were kind of like, okay, there's nothing there. We didn't pass any resolution on it at that point. I think we were kind of all just digesting the material because there was really nothing to respond to initially. But then I got an email from someone in the disability community who just kind of wanted to call out that that's kind of what the problem with the draft is that there's like nothing to respond to because there's no action items to present, right? A lot of the action items say like, begin to consider acquiring data to be able to do this thing. And it's like, well, when? What's the timeline? There's no like, by 2022, we will accumulate data on Kerber so that we can do X, Y, and Z. So that was kind of the impetus of writing this. And a lot of this came from a response of the transition plan from the email. And then also just like me looking at it again and looking at the presentation again and kind of wondering about it. And when I read it, I do ask, any member of Public Works who's here, if you see something differently than the way it's seen here based on that transition plan, to just call that out because, this is the editing process. So we would just want to make sure that we're accurate and correct. But this is kind of the draft that came together just so that we can kind of keep Public Works honest when they're talking about their ADA transition plan. So should I just read aloud, Peter, this long resolution? Does that work for you? Okay, I think you said yes. The Pedestrian Advisory Committee is disappointed by the draft Minneapolis Americans with Disabilities Act ADA transition plan released by Public Works in November 2021. The current draft fails to identify existing accessibility barriers to walking and rolling in Minneapolis and lacks a concrete plan to address them 31 years after the ADA was enacted. Oh, thank you, Millicent. Second paragraph, our concerns are listed below. We would appreciate an opportunity for Public Works staff to return to the Programs and Policy Subcommittee to present responses to these concerns. So we are, based on this, we are actually going to ask for these specific things that we saw, and we actually are requesting that someone come back to talk to us about them, because maybe these things are addressed and they just weren't in the presentation or they weren't in the transition plan, but there actually is behind the scenes information that we could have so that we do feel that they're being addressed. So that is our ask specifically. And then we list the things that we are asking about, just so that we know. Number one, the most problematic section of the plan is the self-assessment. It does not identify specific accessibility barriers, pushes assessments of these barriers into the future, and provides no time frame for action. So again, theming is time frame, lack of time frame. The 4 infrastructure accessibility barriers in the public right-of-way are shared, but no actionable steps are outlined in the transition plan. Those 4 accessibility barriers are the next 4 things, and then they get into detail. So number 2 is ADA compliant curb ramps. Public Works collected data on curb ramps in 2012, but this plan states that additional data needs to be collected and analyzed. It does not acknowledge how many years it will take to fix non-compliant ramps using the $500,000 budgeted per year for specifically this purpose, nor when this additional data will be collected. So again, a lack of timeline. Traffic signals. The transition plan notes that Public Works completes an inventory of traffic signals in 2019, completed an inventory in 2019, but data is currently being processed without a specific timeline. This data needs to be included in the transition plan before the document can be considered complete and must include a timeline for transitioning all traffic signals and removing barriers. Sidewalks. The transition plan states that planning for a sidewalk inventory is underway. This means that as of 2021, the city of Minneapolis does not have a comprehensive inventory of sidewalk conditions, sidewalk gaps, non-compliant sidewalks, and barriers within the sidewalk right-of-way. This statement is followed by a vague commitment to complete a sidewalk inventory by some undetermined date. It is unbelievable that Public Works does not collect this data through self-assessment process and that they consider this draft complete without it. Street crossings. The transition plan effort also failed to identify barriers through the self-assessment process. For street crossings, a concrete timeline of when this data will be collected and assessed needs to be created for this plan. The transition plan mentions winter sidewalk maintenance, sidewalk cafes, construction barriers, and other temporary encroachments, but lacks specific actions or policy changes to address them. The plan must address the need for additional resources to address temporary accessibility barriers such as these. For Minneapolis to meet its TAP and climate emergency goals, it must have a robust effort to remove accessibility barriers. This is also needed per ADA law. The draft transition plan in its current form shows that Public Works does not have such a plan, nor is one being created. We welcome responses to our concerns from Public Works. So I would say there's a little bit of editorializing on the listed portion, which probably could be shortened and made a little more succinct, but this is kind of just the idea of just kind of calling out that there really isn't a timeline for a lot of what needs to be addressed per ADA law, and that kind of just creating this transition plan and editing it and updating it and submitting it in November was kind of them just kicking the can down the road to a certain degree. So I don't know if anybody has responses or if anyone from Public Works has thoughts or anyone on the PAC is interested in this.
Thanks, Abigail. Yeah, look for hands. Hi, Raina.
Hey, so Abigail, I think this looks really strong. I really like it a lot. One question I had is sort of the reference to the quote unquote additional data. And I know you're kind of looking at this with an eye towards, we're really looking for a timeline here. Are we also maybe asking them to specify what additional data would be collected or should be collected or that they want to collect? I don't know if that might be too much for this particular resolution, but just wanted to throw it out there.
I think that's a great note. I think that could easily be included in that, in any of these bullets, like we want to know not only what data, we want to know what data and when, right? We want them to answer both. That's a good point.
To the extent it's a resolution, I think we tighten up, we'd make it shorter maybe, but I think we're not, this isn't so much a resolution as since we're asking for, a response to specific concerns. I think we can be as elaborate and add as many numbers as we need to, because I think that's what we're doing, right? We're not sending this to the mayor. We're sending this we're sending this as a memorandum of some, for lack of a better term, or email to our presenters, right, and ask them to either respond or have the team, the correct part of the relevant part of their team to respond. Yeah, true. I don't know who all this will go to, but that is kind of our overarching goal, is so that it's really kind of pointed to just the anyone from Public Works who could come and respond to this. Sorry
if I missed this, but did you say you won't pass this as a formal resolution?
Oh, we will, but
yeah,
but
okay, that's what I thought. Okay,
it'll be specific in there that we're really just asking Public Works to return with responses, but we're hoping everybody reads it and goes, yeah, wait a second, why doesn't Public Works have this information? I need to look at it more. So
I've got 3 points. or questions. One is calling out winter more specifically. I know it's temporary, but it's not temporary as well. Two is the self-assessment aspect, just given what the city did with the winter maintenance study and their own self-assessment that 97% of sidewalks are cleared adequately. I am a little curious about that. And then the third is, oh shoot, I forgot the third. Sorry, those are my two.
Yeah, so you're saying just like edit number 6 to not sound like all of those things are temporary, because some of them are actually like yearly consistently.
Or putting winter in with traffic. Like you can't use APS if you can't reach the button because it's not been cleared. The curb cuts are useless when they're not cleared. Like most of these things that are part of our ADA efforts are really functionally useless for a decent portion of the year for people with disabilities. So just maybe repeating it more or highlighting it more. And I remembered my third one, which is that what kind of usage understanding is going on as part of that inventory, because people are having to get around, and people who don't have car access in Minneapolis who have disabilities, how are they getting around? What's their experience? Is there anything besides an internal, like, I feel like we would learn more if we observed and talked to people, we as a city, about how people are actually navigating it and experiencing it. And I'm not hearing that within a lot of the work that Public Works does in self-assessments and reports.
All right. Austin.
All right, I'll say my comment. This is a really great document. It's very well written. I think one thing I would add is more authentic engagement with community engagement. This is a personal pet peeve of mine, is when organizations do community engagement, but then don't do anything with that community engagement, or don't do it justice, I should say. And so it looks like they did a fair amount of community engagement, and that's good, but it is quite offensive to collect all this data and then do little to show results from that, particularly bringing those results back to community. And furthermore, I would like to see more emphasis on getting community engagement from more marginalized communities. So yes, people with disabilities, but what about people of color with disabilities or other intersecting groups? I didn't see that listed anywhere in there. And so with the exception of they did talk to folks who are aging and also disabled, which is good, but I wish they would go more for that. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is more robust community engagement, and kind of like to what we said before, making sure that this community engagement actually leads to measurable results and has a plan with a timeline where we can see those results and how they impact those communities that were engaged in this project. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, thanks, Austin. Good stuff. I've got those notes down for what I gather will be a new draft. I'll go back to my question. So we can pass this as a resolution, and we'll get back, and by which it will go to Public Works, and then to our presumed addressees in the ADA subset cohort of Public Works, and response thereupon.
Yeah. Yes, to be specific, mayor, city council, and then the project manager at a minimum.
And just to expand on that, like that's Amy, I believe Kathleen also came, but Amy Morgan, actually she just changed her last name, but she's very aware of this, appreciative of like the thought that's going into the detail on this resolution. And I do expect follow-up in whatever form, which is one of the things you're all asking for. So just to let you all know that she is aware and will continue to watch out for this.
Okay. Thank you, Matthew.
What I will also say too, since I felt like I had really strong feelings about community engagement, if you want me to draft a few sentences about what I think would be good community engagement language, I could pass that over to you and you can add it in as well. I can do that later this week.
Yes, please.
Okay.
And thank you for offering, Austin. So I think like the last item, we have a redraft of this resolution to undertake. With the notes I have, at the very least, changing something in lines of paragraph 6 to from temporary to something like recurring accessibility barriers. And Julia, let me get with you on the rest too, and then we'll send that back around. Here this week and be ready for next week's full pack meeting. How's that sound? Everybody?
Sounds good.
All right. We have another. I think we have a resolution on the subject of a city of Minneapolis program brought to our attention regarding traffic calming for neighborhood streets. Julia, do you have a?
Yep.
Good. All right.
Yeah, I do. And I'll give just a really brief overview for anybody who didn't take a look. The city is looking at its processes for how to roll out traffic calming measures. And it includes just a little bit of detail and then a little tentative flow chart on that, which includes as one of the steps presenting a proposed traffic calming measure to a neighborhood group, and if it gets voted down there, declining to implement it. So that's my broad overview, which is a little bit pointed, but mostly to give context for the resolution here, which I will read, and then any questions or discussion, we can dive into it more. So,
Julia, can I just give a touch more context?
Oh yeah, of course.
So our traffic and parking services team or division, they get thousands of requests a year for a variety of things, and temporary traffic calming measures is a very big volume, and for years and years we've just only pretty much been able to say no to all of these requests, and then also with the Vision Zero initiative, those corridors are on some of the busiest, like high volume and commercial corridors in the street or in the city. And so what this is, these traffic calming measures are more for what we call urban neighborhood streets. And the idea is that it's a way to maybe more thoughtfully in an organized way be able to respond to some of these requests. So that's where this is coming from. I just wanted to give some of that context. And then I'll stop there.
Okay. The PAC unequivocally supports the immediate installation of vehicle traffic calming measures across the city, deployed without hesitation and with a priority in placing them along high crash, high density residential and community corridors and on transit routes. The need for measures to, quote, reduce the negative effects of motor vehicle use, end quote, is inarguable. In a city that proclaims to value equity, accessibility, and sustainability, and states a near-term goal of zero vehicle traffic deaths, the responsibility for starting the process to improve safety cannot be shunted off to the most excluded and vulnerable residents. The PAC strongly opposes processes that legitimize or invite the predatory delay of basic safety improvements for the most vulnerable road users, especially under the guise of public engagement. In particular, we oppose giving neighborhood organizations a veto to prevent safety improvements, especially while these groups continue to fail to meet city standards for representation and inclusion, and so long as their geographic boundaries serve to divide the organizing power of residents of our most dangerous streets. Additionally, the PAC urges the city to rethink its understanding of vehicle traffic calming measures. Our current streets fail us dramatically and daily in every corner of our city. Public Works needs not, quote, validate the concerns, end quote, of dangerous driving and deadly streets. Rather, it is only incumbent on the city to meet two of its most basic obligations. One, to ensure the right of all people, including those who are poor and or disabled, to move freely and without fear of injury or death. And two, to protect community public health by reducing the presence of and dispersing concentrations of known toxins directly adjacent to residents without preference for those with political connections, wealth, property, or other privilege.
I'll second that.
Can I just
Mhm.
I want to check in on my understanding of what I just heard and read. You support immediate installation of traffic calming measures, right? You are very against the neighborhood organization being having the power that's proposed. Is that basically the substance?
We support these being installed with priority to our community corridors.
And is that in the, where is that one? Which paragraph?
It's the first sentence. Deploy
Okay.
without hesitation
Okay.
and with a priority in. And then it also, I mean, it's referenced twice later. But
I'm
more
just gonna,
obliquely.
I just want to ask a question and see what you and what the pack thinks. Could you just shorten it to those 3 points? Because I think I got a little lost in some of the other narrative. I'll be honest. And I think those 3 points are very powerful. Like the additionally paragraph, I don't know if that's.
I mean, the fact
helpful.
that the city's like demonstrate that this is a valid concern, and we're literally losing like 45,000 people a year to needless death, immediate death, not even counting anything else. That the framing is just completely upside down. The conversation is upside down. If there are more safety requests, then there is ability of the city to meet those requests. We are failing. That is indicative of failure, not indicative of a problem in prioritization, except that we don't do it broadly. Like, we know there's a problem and we're not addressing it, and we're not saying we'll do all of these unless something. We're saying we will only do these if, and here's veto power for people who might feel mildly inconvenienced or fear a change to the status quo. Safety is not prioritized in that process. And that, I think, is something that is critical, is that fundamental starting point is messed up. In my view.
Now, absent.
Okay, go ahead. Yep.
I would just say, this did get presented. The program to get presented is so I guess we're not all on the same page we didn't get a presentation, or that would be forthcoming. I guess I want our resolution to be responsive to, I guess, as you're asking for a resolution as regards the program. Is the scope of the resolution as written? It goes beyond that and beyond, and my understanding of the program is that, but it doesn't mean we don't want to say these things. And I guess I'm hoping we're reaching a right audience again in this when we write this resolution. I guess I'm looking for other people's thoughts on it, and if is it.
Well, I guess from my point of view, if we're trying to say we're for traffic calming measures and we don't want the neighborhood organizations vetoing those, then we should say so and just leave it at that. And a few other points, of course, but that's what we're against. And of course, that shouldn't happen because most of them drive and most of them aren't using the traffic calming measures. Well, maybe that's not an issue, but If that's the issue, we don't need 5 paragraphs for that. We need maybe 1.5.
Thanks. And
The other-
Matt is his hands up.
Yeah, well, I have a comment and a question. I definitely agree with the concern on the neighborhood organizations. And that was my first thought when reading through the proposal. I'm also just wondering if there's any elaboration on what the minimum screening requirements, the minimum screening threshold would be.
To validate the concern.
It just in the proposal, it goes to a step 4 where Public Works would evaluate it for a minimum screening threshold.
Yeah.
And I just wasn't sure what that meant if someone's, you know, if there's a dangerous street and somebody just decides, well, it doesn't meet a certain threshold, what that, like if that's really an acceptable way we handle this.
Does Public Works have a insight on that?
I was doing a control F to see if I could find that out in the document. No, I don't know that answer. Wasn't able to get that, but
okay,
it's a good question. I was trying to see if it said that in the flow chart, but I don't think it does.
Okay. If it comes up, let us know. Paul, you were up. You have your hands too.
Yeah, I guess I don't remember the PAC hearing a presentation from Public Works on this program. So I think, my opinion, this resolution is a little premature. I'd like to hear the presentation on the program first.
They're not giving us one.
Resolution.
Is going forward.
Yeah,
without us, either way.
I'll note I sent this out to the PAC. I don't know, in November, and just noted that the project manager basically asked me to send it out to get you all to take a look at it and provide comments, and then basically the chairs of the subcommittee and Abigail, we thought we would pass a resolution this way. So yeah, I guess long story short, they aren't planning on coming in person.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess I just have a problem that we didn't see the resolution before this meeting, so it's kind of tough to comment on it without looking at the resolution, and then I have to look through the city's proposed program again. So to me, it's too early to take a vote on a resolution. I know we do it at the full PAC, but I guess I'd like to have a little more time to take a look at this and then also compare that to what the program is.
My understanding is,
Again,
we can go.
One more comment. The comments about the neighborhood organization. Based on my experience, it's good to have the neighborhood organization involved because often you'd have a block, a residential street that wants to close or divert traffic onto a neighboring residential street. So the neighborhood as a whole should be giving an opinion on that versus just the people that live on that one block of street.
I don't think neighborhood organizations are set up to do that because they split people on the worst streets by their geographic definitions, and we know they're not representative. I agree with that concern, and that's, I guess, one of the concerns I have with the traffic calming program overall is that it seems like we could end up with a scenario like we have in certain parts of South Minneapolis where there's diverters to keep drivers from going through north-south or east-west. And that funnels more traffic onto the corridors that we've zoned to be high density residential and primarily renter, often elderly. So that I think is a really good point though, of how do we make sure that these measures are not just transferring the burden of drivers to less connected places. I don't think neighborhood orgs protect from that, but I think that's a really important point.
I have one, I guess, final thought on the way it's written. The first paragraph says that you basically support you support the installation on high crash, high density residential and community corridors and transit routes, and that makes it seem like you support something that this isn't. So I just want to be clear that the streets that are eligible in this proposed process do not include any streets on the high injury network, the MSA system, or owned by other agencies. So, but it seems like you're saying that you support.
I mean, that's where they should
something
be. The fact that I mean, maybe this
No,
is,
one
I
second,
don't know.
Julia.
The whole,
Julia,
sorry.
1 second. All I'm saying is it's confusing. Like maybe you should put that in the part where you talking about what you oppose. Because if people are reading this, maybe they think that the program does include high crash, high density community corridors, and that's not true. That's all I'm saying. Like it's just the way it's written is confusing. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, I assume.
What's that?
I was writing it with the assumption that it was being read by people who were familiar with it. Therefore, that incongruity would be apparent, but it makes sense to make that more explicit.
Okay.
We do have the benefit of 8 or 9 days between now and the our full meeting to refine this or whatever we want to, however we want to edit or draft this resolution, and the time. We have the convenience of time to look at the plan linked, the City of Minneapolis plan has linked. Just Matthew, that did go out to everybody at some point. I just remember the email addressing us and Abigail.
Yeah, the most recent communication, like last week or something like that, was to the chairs of PMP and Abigail. I'll find the date real quick, but I believe I sent it like in November. But I did send it out to the full.
I guess what I'm getting at is like everybody have a chance to see it, and if we're going to look at this with this, if they're asking for a resolution, we want to put it up, and it has to be on the January meeting, that everybody get a chance to, Paul's point well taken, have the time to review the program and the resolution where that addresses it.
Yeah,
and,
Peter, to clarify, the resolution was not sent out beforehand.
Yeah.
If that's what you were asking. So it would be helpful to send that out to folks to be able to look at that. And that's just because it was not ready when we sent out everything, but we're allowed to read the resolutions.
Yeah.
I'll note it was on 11/22, and if you want to search for it, it was under the subject was new process for neighborhood traffic calming.
Yeah, I see it. I see it.
Find it there.
That's it, so.
And Peter also shared it in the email that he sends out.
Right. Okay. There's towards getting it to the full membership prior to with enough time to look at it for January too.
I'm happy to redraft something. I'm also, if somebody else wants to, whatever works best.
Okay. And I'll pitch in on that, Julia, and we can address both the program itself and then the larger issues too that are both in that resolution.
Great.
So,
anybody else?
Okay. All right. Pending any other comments, we have completed our agenda +1 and have a minute or two for announcements if anyone has anything.
I have an announcement about my co-chair reaching a milestone distance. As we were talking about this very meeting, Peter hit 15,000 miles lifetime app and I think you said 5,000 since the start of the pandemic.
Yeah, it was, yeah, it would have been, yeah, yep. So yeah, over the last, I guess, 5.5 years, since I picked up an app for it, I've tracked 15,000 miles, and in the next week, it'll be 30 million steps in that, over that time, so. Mostly outside.
Good job.
So, thank you. I'm still alive. I'm built for it. Thanks, Julia.
I'm excited. When walking is wonderful for people, and I miss my mini miles, so I'm glad that you're getting those in, and I'm looking forward to returning to that kind of.
Right on. Yeah.
I'd love to know how many like months that is, to like put that in perspective, or weeks, like how many miles is that a week or a month as you've been tracking it? That's like a massive number, but it's also like, what do you
think? When I did
think?
3,000 in a year, it was 8.2 a day. So
Okay.
Peter's got to be up around 10 a day.
Yeah, it's usually between 9 and 10 a day. Yeah.
See, that's like, wow, that, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else? Any other announcements? Because we're right at 5:59. Anything else? If not, I will call this adjourned. Thanks. Great turnout in the holiday weekend. Really appreciate everybody's comments, participation, and presence. And we'll see you next time. Thanks.
Thanks all.
Thanks, everybody.